That's one more.
Of course.
Good. To what extent do you think that the policy was a matter of class stratification as much as racism, or do you not think that?
I think that there was a level of class stratification if you were not a white American. So there were Irish immigrants that ended up in the peonage system. There were other immigrants, notably the Irish. That's who Pete Daniel talks about, as well as Douglas Blackman in their books, and attorneys from the North that were actually going to file on their behalf. The difference is that some of those immigrants were actually able to escape. The blacks, when they escaped, they were actually hunted down by the sheriffs. So it was more based on racism. It was a way to extend the culture from before the Civil War to persist after the Civil War.
I wanted to follow up on a question that Professor LeClaire asked, because he anticipated a concern that I had regarding how your argument may or may not impact our understanding of race-based slavery. So you make allusions to the antecedent forms of peonage. Mm-hmm. And so it's, in other words, peonage did not originate post-Civil War as a race-based system that could evade the 13th Amendment. Rather, it's pre-existing, has Spanish origins. Mm-hmm. And so, if that's true, I don't mean historically the origins, but rather, what are then the implications for understanding the treatment of African Americans or freedmen in this immediate post-war period? Are the peonage, anti-peonage laws primarily directed at concerns for African Americans, or is it a concern for anybody who was caught up in the peonage system? And does that reflect maybe a difference in how we should conceive of those who are in favor of peonage laws, their disposition towards what peonage meant and what it should mean?
Okay. So in 1872, you have the slaughterhouse cases where the judge who delivered opinion made a reference to the Mexican peonage, including labor systems. Even though Congress was primarily concerned with African Americans facing forced labor, this system was, the Anti-Peonage Act was actually applied to people regardless of race or gender. And so essentially what occurred, and I actually make reference to one of the cases, there was a case in Texas where a woman was held in peonage at a brothel, and she did not receive any pay. This woman was a Mexican immigrant who was brought over, who was working in Laredo, Texas, and the woman who ran the brothel actually recruited her from Laredo, brought her back to San Antonio, and there she worked but received little pay, and she was constantly threatened and intimidated into not leaving. And she was withheld from leaving because she owed the employer advance fees for transportation to San Antonio. Although the employer told her